يا مالكنا يا عسانا وتلك تدعي الأطفال لك قبل الشباب أتعبت ظهرك يا أبو متعب ورجلك لين شعبك اعتلى متن السحاب.
Good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Spotlight. Today, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its citizens are celebrating the 6th anniversary of the allegiance of the custodian of the two holy mosques. And we will discuss in tonight's edition the generous royal decrees and its role in building the homeland of the kingdom and its citizens. Allow me to introduce first my distinguished guests, Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Awashig, Director General of the International Economic Relations at the GCC Secretariat General in Riyadh. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
And to his left, طلعت حافظ, Media and Banking Awareness Committee Secretary General. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And last but not the least, Dr. Abdullah Al-Haydan, Advisor at the Ministry of Islamic Affairs. Welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure.
The viewers, the generous royal decrees and its role in building homeland and citizens. Let's take a look at this report and we'll come back to you for further discussion of the topic.
يا مالكنا يا عسانا فدوة لك تدعي الأطفال لك قبل الشباب يا مالكنا يا عسانا فدوة لك
والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
لين شعبك اعتلى متن السحاب.
The royal decrees, a real investment in building homeland and citizens. The custodian of the two holy mosques, King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, issued a set of royal decrees after praising the entire sectors and classes of the kingdom's people. As well, he praised the national solidarity that recently emerged through the unity and deep relation between people and the state that provided safety, stability, and prosperity for the whole country. The custodian of the two holy mosques confirmed that people's concerns, demands, and affairs are always in his attention because citizens are his pillar after Allah Almighty. The latest royal decrees answered many questions, including the big question which need to be strengthened or processed, such as unemployment, housing, and call for Allah, health, and combating corruption. These large files needed decisions can provide answers according to scientific and practical frameworks, and this is what is observed in the royal orders. The problem of unemployment had been addressed by the royal decrees through creating more job opportunities, whether those jobs are military or civilian. It is also addressed through the adoption of monthly bonuses of 2,000 Saudi riyals for job seekers, which will reduce the negative social effects produced by this dangerous phenomenon. The royal decrees will address a wide range of job seekers. Therefore, this decision was the key to the psychological and social stability of those job seekers. The generous royal decrees also treated the housing problem through two axes. First, raising the support presented to applicants to the Real Estate Development Fund from 300,000 Saudi riyals to 500,000 Saudi riyals, and this will enhance the ability of citizens to build and will enhance the economy mobility. The second axis is the implementation of housing projects in many regions of the kingdom, whereas the king ordered to build 500,000 units worth 250 million Saudi riyals. Therefore, the generous decrees finished that chronic problem for citizens who were waiting for many years in order to assess their desired accommodation. Furthermore, the generous royal order, which recently released to convert the Public Housing Authority to a ministry, in which that decrees assigned to that ministry all tasks related to housing and made it a council of all parties concerned with this case. We knew that the state take this dilemma seriously, and it is only right way to treat that case radically. The Anti-Corruption Commission indicates the management experience of our wise leadership, who is aware that pumping funds, expanding in massive projects, along with pushing the wheel of development, may make some executives negligent in maintaining the level of integrity or slacken in the application of honesty standards. Therefore, the king, may Allah protect him, set up the Anti-Corruption Commission that linked directly to him in order to be effective in putting the mechanisms of combating corruption and tightening the grip around the corruption's neck. From the strong pillars of this body is the provision of 500 jobs in the Ministry of Commerce to monitor prices and fight against greed, along with implementing the deterrent punishment on the manipulators and slanders them without hesitation. However, the royal orders confirmed on handling those situations. It's also confirmed on working actively in supporting the call for Allah and arranging for a perfect institutional work through the establishment of Saudi jurisprudential complex that is qualified to answer the entire questions required to the vagaries of modern life. Support for the institutions concerned with call for Allah was generous, whereas the king ordered the adoption of a nearly 1,500,000,000 Saudi riyals to support advocacy and guidance institutions, bodies of promotion of virtue and prevention of vice, in addition to the assemblies of memorizing Quran and restoration of mosques throughout the kingdom. The royal decrees did not stop at all these limits, but also confirmed on health care, as it allocated 16 billion Saudi riyals spent on upgrading and building health cities and facilities throughout the kingdom. Hand of development was not confined to one area, but included all regions in the middle, west and east, south and north, as clouds of goodness. Moreover, the royal decrees did not neglect the private health sector, whereas it raised the support of private hospitals from 50 million Saudi riyals to 200 million Saudi riyals, which will absolutely be reflected upon the citizens' health and life.
شعبك يعتلى متن السحاب يا ملكنا يا عسانا فدوة الليل أطفالك قبل الشباب مثلك يا ملكنا ومثل فعلك الأمم صارت لنا تحسب حساب منه مثلك يا ملكنا ومثل فعلك الأمم صارت لنا تحسب حساب الحمل له جبل ما شال حملك سيرتك في طاعة الله.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm still with my guests. I introduced him a while ago. Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Awashig, one more time, Director General of the International Economic Relations at the GC Secretary General. Welcome, sir. And I want to start with you, Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Awashig. 20 royal orders covering all aspects of life of Saudis in general, of the Saudi citizens. As a gentleman of economy, how did you see at the beginning, how did you see those orders and how did it affect positively on the life?
I think it is probably the largest stimulus package in the history of Saudi Arabia, and probably one of the largest, if not the largest stimulus package anywhere in the world since the beginning of the global financial crisis. The size of it is probably about 500 billion riyals. I counted, you said 20, but I counted 31 different programs that were announced over February and March. and they cover the whole gamut. They include housing, education, social safety net, religious affairs, security and defense. The economic effect of it, I think, will be felt for years. Obviously, there is no way $500 billion is going to be spent in 1 year. So I imagine over the next several years, we'll feel the effect of that. Because $500 billion, if you look at it, it's almost equal to the whole budget of 2011. Spread over a number of years. 500
billion Saudi riyals.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Right. And so I think the effects will be reflected in growth of the higher growth rate of the economy, greater number of jobs, but mainly greater welfare for Saudi citizens.
Mr. Hafid, first of all, as a banker and a gentleman interested in banking and its industry, how do you see such movement of 500 billion riyals into the economy right there? All of a sudden, we did not expect it. We expect a 2-month salary or more or less. But as Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Awashik said, it's the biggest stimulus budget or an amount of money to be given all at once. In your point of view, what's the effect of such?
Well, definitely, as you look, as Mr. Dr. Abdulaziz has mentioned, it's the economic stimulus all over the world, that it's a historical thing, not only in Saudi, but also worldwide, especially if you consider the world financial crisis and its negative impacts on all the economy of the world. Definitely, as a banking sector, will definitely benefit from such liquidity, because everything that's bumped into the system go back to the banking sector. Even individual, when they receive the 2-month salary or the 14 billion injected into the real estate fund, it needs to be deposited somewhere, and this is where the banking system is the pipeline, if you will. That's where people deposit their money. And if you look at the total liquidity in the system, it's almost over 1 trillion Saudi riyal, and this is what tell you exactly the reflection, the positive impact of the liquidity and the system, which again has channeled through the banking sector. So definitely, in short, what I wanted to say, the impact is so positive and so great to the banking sector. And also, when we talk about the 250 billion Saudi riyal, that will be spent on building 500,000 units. Again, the banking system and the liquidity, overall liquidity in the economy, definitely will benefit from that. When you talk about increasing the loans, the private loans to hospital, from 50 million to 200 million, again, the banking sector will have a share in such, because they will start lending, I'm sure, to hospital who on the private sector level, whom they're going to be building some hospital. So the banking sector, you will see it on both ways, on the credit side, if you will, and also on the liquidity side, where they will entertain the liquidity in the system.
Dr. Abdullah Al-Haydan, also among the orders, you got your share as the Ministry of Islamic Affairs. Among them, the allocation of 500 million Saudi riyals for the restoration of mosques, the allocation of 200 million Saudi riyals support of the associations of memorizing the Holy Quran, building a new system, a new judicial system, if I may. It's already been signed a few years ago. The judicial system, Al-Qada, so how did you benefit as the Ministry of from these royal orders in general, and then we'll go on in details.
Okay, in general, as you said, there is the King's speech on the Friday of like 2 months ago. He
on the 18th of March 2011.
18th of March, yes. He ordered the allocation of 500 million Saudi riyals, half a billion, for the restoration of mosques.
Yes,
and it's very needed, this program, because there are a lot of mosques that need some restoration, especially in the villages and in the desert and in the small villages.
And the highways.
And in the highways. Because in the cities there are rich people who want to donate to restore and to build in the first place, and then to maintain and restore these mosques in the big cities. But in small cities and villages and in the desert, there is no donation for that. So this program is very much needed. And we have a list of hundreds of mosques who need restoration. So this came at
the right time.
At the right time. The second thing is the support of the da'wah offices. You know, there are 300 da'wah offices all over the kingdom.
Yes, the promotion of the advocacy and guidance offices. Yes.
Yes. Yes. And this is also they play these 300 offices. They play a very important role in educating the Muslims and also in letting the non-Muslims know about Islam in their area. And the king ordered 300 million Saudi riyals for these offices, and there are 300 offices. So every office wants 1 million out of the 300 million, but still they are discussing in the ministry how to distribute the 300 million among the 300 offices, because some offices are in big cities and they have a lot of responsibility, a lot of activities, and some in small villages they don't need as much as.
But we hope that you don't take more time than the orders.
No, there is also
it's been actually 2 or 3 months so far.
No, I think the minister has formed a committee from the high employee of the ministry, and they are working to speed up the distribution of the money and to benefit the da'wah offices. Also, there was a 200 million Saudi riyals for the Quran associations, and there are 200 Quran associations in the kingdom, and also this will be distributed soon among the Quran associations.
That's the general idea, and now let's discuss it in details. Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Awaishi, also the main theme was the first is the adoption of 2 months salary for students and all employees of state or all state employees, and also the adoption of 2,000 Saudi riyals monthly for job seekers, the unemployed. In your point of view as an economist, how do you see such a thing, if we talk particularly about the job seekers? Before, the unemployed did not have any money, especially when they are at an age of asking at the 20s and 30s, and they are shy to ask their families or people to help them.
Well,
how do you see the support?
It attracted my attention that the $2,000 are for job seekers in both the private and the public sector.
Yes.
It was quite interesting. I think in a situation like Saudi Arabia, economists would tell you, do not give this kind of assistance to job seekers. Why? Because there is abundance of jobs, and there is a fear if you give this aid to job seekers, it may reduce their energy to find jobs. But I think obviously these payments have not started. I think they will start the beginning of the lunar year in about 7 months or 6 months. During these 6 months, I hope that the aid, the assistance to job seekers will be calibrated so as to direct job seekers to get training, to help them find jobs, and to make sure that the 2,000 riyals monthly stipend does not contribute to lengthening their unemployment. I think already, from what I understand, a large number of people have registered to receive this assistance, and from some indications, not all of them are probably the kind of people you want to give stipends for. You want to give them to those who are looking seriously for work and who are willing to train and acquire skills that are needed in the job market. So this is one of the most difficult programs to manage anywhere in the world. This is not unemployment compensation. Unemployment compensation is a kind of insurance that's usually funded by employees and employers themselves, and is given to them in accordance with the length of their service. And it's some type of insurance program. This is not an insurance program.
The GOSI system and the retirement system in Saudi Arabia, we have the GOSI.
This will be pure stipend. It's not insurance, given directly from the government to job seekers to help them during the time until they find.
I didn't see you like. Are you following the Chinese say that says, "Don't give him a fish, and teach him how to fish"?
I think that's what I mean by calibrating the program so as to incentivize job seekers to find work rather than help them
And depend on those 2000.
Depend on the 2000 and not look seriously for jobs.
But it's, it's. I think the intention is good. Sir, let me go to طلعت حافظ. Mr. حافظ, installing the higher cost of living allowance within the basic salary of adoption to 3,000 riyals in general. We had employees who received less before, and that's a faithful look from the custodian of the two holy mosques to look at the minimum allowance of those people. Also, as an economist, how do you see this support to give that push to the low income, especially? How does it affect?
Well, firstly, I believe the 2,000, you could look at it negatively and you could look at it positively. Mm-hmm. You look at it negatively if you really rely on that 2,000 and you just stay for a job. Mm-hmm. But the 2,000 is a temporary thing. It is not evergreen thing. This is one thing. Second, it should be used to train yourselves, to make yourself ready for the market.
For the job, for the market,
for the
yes,
labor
exactly.
market, if you will. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's for 1 year fixed time span.
Yes, you're right.
This one thing. And the 2,000 will really encourage some youth or some people to feel the income coming. So when that year passes, no more income.
To taste the honey.
To taste the income, to taste the money.
Exactly.
But again, the 2,000, it is not really a great deal of money that you could live comfortably. So this is why when the king started the two holy mosques, King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, has came and put a minimum wage of 3,000, realizing the fact that the 3,000 is a minimum level that one could live comfortably, especially if you take the 3,000 is the basic salary, I believe. So if you put the pluses and pluses, like transportation allowance, whatever,
housing,
other things on the top of the 3,000, it may turn into 5,000. And 5,000 wage, minimum wage, I believe, total package, is reasonably enough for a small family to live on 5,000. So what I'm trying to say, I believe it's the 3,000 as a minimum wage. It's a good start, fixing the 3,000. Also on the top of that, the 2,000. But again, you may have some abuses, definitely, to anything that you to any system that you have. That people would abuse the 2,000 and just lay back and relax for the rest of their life. But this is not the case, simply because it's a temporary thing. It's a fixed time. It's a 1 year. It doesn't, make you
take it or lose it.
Take it or lose it. Yeah.
And I think it has to be withheld if somebody is not looking for work.
If it's not serious.
Dr. Abdullah Al-Haydan, also the allocation of 250 billion Saudi riyals for housing to build 500,000 housing units in the kingdom is a massive project, is one of the biggest projects, as Dr. Al-Awaishi have said earlier. It's one of 500,000 units, comparing to Saudi Arabia, which is more or less 20 million Saudi riyals, that almost 5% or less of the people will be able to live right there. How do you see such project and the royal order? What did it mean, and how did it affect also on the real estate market in general and the people?
The people are very happy with this project. As you said, 500,000 units is not a small number of units, and it's very much needed, actually, because we have a lot of young people who just graduated and they are working with the minimum wage sometimes, and it's difficult for them to afford for housing. And now the rent of apartments and housing units is cutting maybe 50% of their salaries. But if these 500,000 units is finished within 5 or 10 years, actually every year there will be maybe around between 50,000 and 100. And this will change the face of our cities and our small towns and villages. And the second thing, and the most important thing, is to offer a reasonable and a good housing for the young Saudis. And I think it's the best investment, because as you know, the surplus of the income is put in Western banks and world banks, and now we have more than 2 trillion, I think, in reserve for the
that's the
central bank.
Yes,
and I think this is the best thing, to spend this 250 billion in the kingdom. This will be have a lot of consequences and a lot of work and side effects, which is good for the economy and for the society in general. And also, it's a good investment, I think, because you put these buildings in our home country, and of course, the citizen will pay for this, but it will be reasonable payment, as with the case with the real estate bank. It will be maybe between 12,000 and 15,000 each year, and this will be reasonable for the young Saudis who just graduated and they just started life, and housing is very heavy burden on their shoulder. And I think it's the best investment to invest in the country and to invest, and it will be paid back to the government. And I think this is the best thing, socially, economically, socially, politically even. When a person own a house, his sense of belonging and his sense of loyalty and identity increases, and this is very important, and to preserve and the stability of the country.
May I add?
Yes, please.
Okay. Back to the 500,000 units, I believe one of the issues that we are suffering in the kingdom from the inflation indicator is the housing rental, if you will, of the apartment. Where this is again the issue, as the doctor has mentioned. 40% of the income of the individual goes on rental. On rental, basically. Yes. And this is not recallable. You see, it just goes and flies, and that's it. It doesn't come back to you as an investment. And as the doctor has mentioned, rightly so, that this is an investment for you, because after 25 years, you will own the house, you will have an investment, and the realizable, unrealizable value when you're going to sell that house, and the capital gain that you will have on the house, plus stability, of course, with your family. So I think that's a very good decision of having 500,000, almost 40% of the total housing requirement for the fifth planning, which is 5 years plan, which call, I believe, for 1,250,000 units. So this is almost 40% or so, and I think that's a good accomplishment.
The viewers, and we'll go for a short break, and we'll come back for further discussion of the royal orders.
يا ملكنا يا عسانا فدوة لك، تدعي الأطفال لك قبل الشباب. يا ملكنا يا عسانا فدوة لك، تدعي الأطفال لك قبل الشباب. أتعبت ظهرك يا أبو متعب ورجلك، لين شعبك اعتلى متن السحاب. أتعبت ظهرك يا أبو متعب ورجلك، لين شعبك اعتلى متن السحاب. لين شعبك اعتلى متن السحاب. يا ملكنا يا عسانا فدوة الليل، أطفالك قبل الشباب، قبل الشباب. من وين نبدأ سيدي؟ فيك أتعبنا الكلام، ما وصلنا لك طرف، فيك أتعبنا.
Welcome to Spotlight. We're still discussing the royal generous orders to the Saudi citizens by the custodian of the two holy mosques on March 18th, 2011. Before I end this issue, let me continue with Mr. Hafid. Mr. Hafid, also we were speaking about the housing and the effect positively or negatively towards the people. Now also the allocation of 40 billion Saudi riyals for the real estate fund, and also raising the limit from 300,000 riyals to 500,000, almost double. How did you see this move?
Again, it's unfortunate I took my loan long time ago. Otherwise, anyway, I'm kidding. Definitely the jacking up of the increasing from 300,000, the minimum loan, to 500,000. That's a plus. Because the problem with the price of land, mostly the price of land take almost 50% or more of the housing. So the 500, I think that's a good move to let people can buy affordable, if you say. Plus now with the new direction of the real estate fund, that you can buy unit. So I believe 500,000 will get you a very good unit, about 350, 400,000, a very decent unit that you could live. This is one. Second, I believe also there are some concerns that it may impact negatively on the real estate, i.e. it may raises the price. It may happen, but this is on a short time span, because 500, what's it is on ground, that definitely will cut the demand on housing to, let's say, 50%. So you will have again a surplus, and this is what we call as being an economist, we call it demand and supply. Once you have the demand equilibrium with the supply, this is where the prices will go flat. And this is now where we can see it. The decrease in the real estate, whether being land or being units, since the royal decrease, that to the contrary, people thought that the real estate prices will go up, but to the contrary, we believe the real estate, it's marginally stabilization, especially on the commercial side. But again, we're talking about culture. Being Saudis, we like big villas and the big space. If we change the mindset, and if we change our culture the way that
to an apartment style,
indeed, or affordable house that can give you the size that you need. I'm not talking about the Japanese houses, but I'm talking about a decent house, and I can bet your house, my house, Dr. Abdullah, maybe we don't use 60% of that house.
Exactly.
It's all for big lands and what have you, and this is costly, not only from the money that you built in, but also from the maintenance point of view, from the ECs that you use, from the electricity bill, from the water bill. So if we can change the mindset by having the size of house that we really need, as they call affordable house, we should be in a good shape.
Dr. Abdulaziz Rawashi, let me go back to you. One of the main orders is the establishment of a national anti-corruption commission for calling to account anyone in the country. First of all, tell us, as an official in the GCC countries, this is the first time we see just a direct order to fight corruption in the government. We know that corruption is all over the world here in this. Well, it varies from a country to another, but the establishment and to give the full responsibility to this sector, to one department, how do you see it?
I think already Saudi Arabia has several programs in the past to fight corruption. There are several oversight and regulatory agencies whose job actually is to locate and weed out corruption. But it's very significant to have a whole institution that's dedicated fully to fighting corruption, combating corruption. So I think this is a very good step in the right direction. And if you notice from the wording of the royal order, there is concern that it may only focus on small officials, so it says directly that it deals with all officials, from ministers down to
all officials of the government. Yes.
And I think
and reports directly to the king.
Right, exactly. And so I think that will give it immunity, that will give it power. So that is, I think, very important. But also, I think what happened in this in this program, several other things I think will help the anti-corruption institution do its job, which is to boost the ability of several monitoring and oversight agencies by allocating new jobs to the General Accounting Office, to the Investigation and Prosecution Office, and also to the Government Watchdog agency, Hayat al-Raqaba wal-Tahqiq. In addition, there's something I think has not been covered fully in the media, the establishment of a new program at the Royal Court. It's called the Reach Out Program. It's a new program, and it's mentioned in one of the royal orders. In addition, I think to all of this to fight corruption in the public sector. There is also the addition of 500 new inspector jobs at the Ministry of Commerce.
Yes.
So that's to fight corruption in the private sector. So I think the totality of these 6 programs or 7 programs indicates a new, I think, emphasis. It's not a new beginning, but it's a new emphasis on fighting corruption and calling it what it is. I think in the past we shied away from calling corruption by name, and I think it's a step forward that now we're talking about corruption, means we have it in both the public and private sector, and the king has established an agency that reports directly to him that's going to fight corruption.
Okay, Dr. Abdullah Al-Haydan, also you've said something about the College of Islamic Scholars, the Fiqh College also, and creating a jurisprudential complex that is called the Saudi Jurisprudential Complex, which is Mujamma al-Fiqh of Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on what does it mean to establish such a complex?
Of course.
And why do we need it while we have so much complexes in Egypt, in Mecca before,
Yes.
and in different countries?
Yes, we have one in Jeddah belonging to the Organization of Islamic Conference, and we have one in Mecca belonging to the Muslim League.
Muslim Leagues, World League, yes.
But this will be a Saudi complex or a Saudi college of Islamic scholars, and to deal with the Saudi society problems, especially with the introduction of and the modernization of the country. There are a lot of fields that we didn't start working on them because there are some legal and Sharia obstacle, and so we need a lot of research, and we need a lot of ijtihad. That is the effort of the well-educated Muslim scholars, such as our scholars in Saudi Arabia, to make ijtihad and to make new opinion, depending on the old and the
on the facts of Islam,
and the facts of Islam in the Quran and in the Sunnah, but to deal with the new problems, a lot of economics problems, such as the mortgage, the housing mortgage, the real estate mortgage, the banking operations, a lot of things that we can do to modernize the country. Socially and economically and politically need new research. For example, I'll give you another example. For example, we have a lot of challenges from the international organizations because the new treaties with regard to, for example, women's rights, children's rights, family rights, and we always support the effort of the international community with regard to this, but with one condition, that it does not contradict with Sharia. So now we need a lot of research, Sharia research, and researchers to do a lot of literature on this, and so we will strengthen our position that we support the women's rights, the children's rights, family rights, but
from an Islamic point of view.
From an Islamic point of view, and we need a lot of research and a lot of books written on this to strengthen our position in the world. So a lot of challenges need to be addressed, and I think there is a lot of hopes with regard to this Islamic Scholar College, and I hope it will succeed. Now it's the responsibility of our ministry to establish this, and inshallah to stimulate the research, the fiqh research in the country.
Mr. Hafid, a while ago you mentioned the 50 million riyals given as a loan to the private hospitals to raise it to 200. But let's talk about the 16 billion Saudi riyals to the Ministry of Health for implementation and expansion of the projects of medical cities. How do you see the number? 16 billion Saudi riyals put all at once to the Ministry of Health. Is it going to raise the standards?
If you allow me just to close the item of the corruption. In order for the corruption, to fight corruption in Saudi Arabia or elsewhere, we have to really make the government rules and process and processes clear cut, simple, easy. Because once you have the bureaucracy going into, this is where the corruption starts going around the system, a shortcut, as they say, to accomplish your your things. This is one. Second, I think the e-government. Once we have really an advanced e-government all over, at an equal footing in the different governments unit, that of course would make the person, you and I, deal with the equipment. So this is less interaction with human being. And when you have a less interaction with human being, this is where you cut corruption. This is what I want. Of course, on the awareness, because we have to really define what is corruption. If you come late to your work, is it corruption? If you're lazy at your work, is it corruption? And I believe it is sort of corruption. So not corruption stealing money.
If you're getting money, right? That's corruption.
But that's a clear corruption. But if you come late to work, is it part of the corruption? If you are lazy in corruption, anyway, back to your question. Definitely the 50 million up to 200 million ceiling. I think it's a lot of money because of the increased cost of building and construction, what have you, cement and that regard. Definitely you need to boost,
medical devices
and
also.
medical devices getting big. Some of the medical devices you're talking $1 million or beyond or more than that. So I think a 200 million is reasonably enough for the private sector. When they have some seed money, if you will, for the project, definitely will support them to build their hospitals.
Dr. Weshik, also the creating of 60,000 military jobs for the Ministry of the Interior, mainly in the Ministry of Interior. How do you see such a move? 60,000.
I think that's one of the main parts of the program is to boost both the security and defense institutions. So the 60,000 jobs for the Ministry of Interior, 60,000 non-civilian jobs for the Ministry of Interior, and then also another royal decree raised the salaries of all people in the military and raised their also ranks. I think one rank, promoting them, almost all of them, and I think this is part of the appreciation of the role of the both security and defense establishment, especially in this time where the whole region is facing instability, whether it's in Yemen or in the north or in the east or almost every part
of the Arab world now. Yes, Syria, Libya, so Tunis.
The government realizes the need to boost its both security and defense capabilities, and that's understandable.
Sir, Dr. Abdullah, also among the royal orders was forwarding all media means not to offend the Grand Mufti of the kingdom or the senior scientists or scholars, as you call them, and also, as you mentioned earlier, establishing branches of General Presidency of Scientific Research and Fatwa throughout the kingdom. As the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, how do you see those two orders in particular?
Of course, they are very important. There are some dignities all over the world in every culture and in every countries that should be protected from unjustifiable criticism. And this is for the Mufti and for the High Commission of Islamic Scholars. But it also, as we saw in when the latest law of the printing and press that was passed only 2 or 3 weeks ago. This protection is broadened to cover all citizens in the country, that the press should respect the privacy of each individual and should not make any claim without sufficient evidence, and any person who is affected by the media can go approach the Ministry of Information and sue the newspaper or the media channels to protect the individuals against any false claims. Because during the time with the new revolution in the communication, the internet and in the satellite televisions, this is some people are not used to, and usually when you introduce something new, people abuse it. For example, when first we have the cellular phone, people they use it wrongly to disturb others, and so the laws has to the laws have to
Control.
keep up with the. So with the media now, everybody can put another picture of another person in the internet and distort it in a way, or to distort his reputation. And these new things, and a lot of people have websites and they have electronic journals, and it's very cheap, and maybe one individual can start such a thing. And so it was very much needed to protect the people against these claims, because also we see in the journals, but in the internet more, a lot of false claims against individuals and against ministers of the government, against scholars, Islamic scholars in the internet, and this should be regulated because it cannot continue.
Let me continue with you. The allocation of 200 million Saudi riyals to support the Commission of Promotion and Virtue and Prevention of Vice.
This is also very important. This organization is very important to protect morality in the country, and especially with the new advancement and new technological advancement, this commission need to
upgrade the systems,
and upgrade their systems, and upgrade their ways, and upgrade their styles. And now there is a new president for the commission of
Abdulaziz Al-Humaydi.
Yes, and he's a young scholar, and he wants to develop and progress the commission.
He's a very nice gentleman. I've met with him. Sir, you mentioned a while ago, Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Awaishi, the creating of 500 controlling jobs in the Ministry of Commerce to punish manipulators of prices, and this is in the private sector, more likely.
Right. Yes.
How do you see such a move? As we heard before, it was, you can count them on the number of your fingers, 10 or
350 all over.
all over the
I think
kingdom.
this is extremely important.
Why is it important, sir?
Okay, one problem we have, I think, whether it's in the Ministry of Commerce or Ministry of Labor or any other ministry that interacts with people, is that while they have fine laws and fine regulations, there are very few people who actually make sure that those laws are respected. And one of the main areas, I think, where everybody finds that the complaints about violations of Fair Trading Act, of competition policy. We have very fine, I think, regulations for all of these things, but it's rare that they are implemented. So I think adding 500 jobs, and I hope more will be added, will boost the ability of the Ministry of Commerce to monitor markets, to make sure that laws are respected, that sales are actually sales, that prices are not increased unduly. I mean, recently there was a case where people who sell clothes raise their prices by huge percentages, claiming that international prices were rising, when in fact international prices were declining. But yet they raised prices here.
And they have
by
to raise
almost
the prices
50%.
because of the nuclear problem in
Yes,
Japan.
almost anything that happens around the world, it gives them an excuse to raise prices, and I think the
Also because I think there is a monopoly, with regard to clothes, with regard to each field of commerce.
maybe it's not monopoly in the strict sense, but yeah, you're right. There is not a free market, definitely, in almost all the things that we import. The importation is controlled by a small number of merchants, not strictly monopoly, but I guess what they call oligopoly. A few people who sometimes have understandings amongst themselves to keep prices at certain levels. So I hope that the addition of 500 inspectors, I think will enable the ministry to monitor the compliance with its laws.
Mr. Hafid, I kept you the most important question, probably it seems, Saudiization of jobs in all public and private sectors. I'm going to take all the three of you because this is the most important.
But I hope we have some time for welfare, because that's my favorite part of the whole program.
Okay, before we go to Saudi, continue, because I have a few minutes. Continue, elaborate on that.
I think really that where you show the humanity of the program and the humanity of Saudis in general is in this component. And it's elaborate. Almost 1/3 of all the royal orders deal with one aspect or another of social welfare, of improving the social safety net. One of them is amnesty for people who are in jail because they cannot pay their debts. I think that's extremely important. I mean, this day and
their
age,
family pays the price.
yes, in this day and age, people should not be jailed because they cannot pay their bills. And I think the government recognized this, and so there is a general amnesty with certain conditions for this. So I think that was extremely important. Another one was addition of 30 billion riyals to the savings and loan bank, which is a microfinance institution for people, for small businesses, for families who want to pull themselves out of poverty and be productive. The addition of funds to the social welfare program and increasing the number of members of the family from 8 to 15.
Yes.
Who are eligible to social
To receive the
welfare.
benefits.
Special programs for productive families, as they're called. For the people with special needs, also they have their share in this package. I think 1,200,000,000 are allocated for people with special needs. I think that is really great. Charities. 150 million riyals are allocated to charities. 100 million riyals for cooperatives. 100 million riyals for small microfinance, very small finance, for artisans. 476 for children, for kids who are in public education, to help them with the cost of education, in addition to a similar program for needy students at the university level, and so on and so forth. I think this whole package is the first time I've seen such depth and extensive treatment of the needs of the poorest and the most vulnerable members of society, the orphans, the widows, the disabled. I think this is how you measure, I think, the humanity and civilization of any society, by how it takes care of its most vulnerable.
Do you want to...
Civilization?
No, but I'll come back. But do you want to add to what Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Awashi said just a while ago?
Yes, I think this is very important.
Because that's one of your major,
yes,
as the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, I think that's your major, is to help also to support the people and help the needy people.
Yes.
You have the charities and associations. And
actually, the charities is under the supervision of the Ministry of Social Affairs. We have around 600 charities, and
how do you see it in general?
we supervise the charities that do relief outside the kingdom in time of crisis outside the kingdom, like the crisis in Pakistan or in Indonesia,
in Morocco,
yes.
in the United States even we have sent $500 million during the Catherine hurricane or something.
So these relief organizations inside the kingdom are under our supervision, but they do charity work and relief outside the kingdom. But with regard to charities inside, it's the social affairs. But I think this is...
As a citizen, I'm asking.
As a citizen and as
how do you see it?
as a person who works in the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, I think it's the Islamic civilization is this is how we show the world how Islam treated the needy, the widows, the poor people, and how to encourage them, how to deal with them. This, I think, will put a lot of emphasis on Islamic civilization. And King Abdullah, I think, is representing the Islamic civilization. We know after 9/11, the Muslims and Islam in particular
were affected,
and there is a lot of stereotypes, a lot of they now call it Islamophobia in Europe and in the United States. It's a phenomenon became, and to make people afraid of Islam, afraid of Muslims, and it is I think used by some enemies of Islam. So I think this show how this kingdom, which is built on Islam, is dealing with the needy and with the poor and and this is very important, I think, and show the personality of King Abdullah and his humanity.
Thank you, Doctor. The question that I kept for you as a banking person: Saudiization of jobs in all public and private sectors. We know in public sector we have we marched forward. But in the private sector, it's been a dilemma. It's been very hard to, because either side, the traders, the commerce people are saying the Saudis are not willing to give me the same time of work that the foreigners do. In general, how do you see this royal decree of Saudiization, and what should we do in order to Saudiyeize most?
I believe you have touched on a very sensitive issue, and a very complicated one. It takes time to
I want to end
talk
the
about
program with it.
Anyway, with such an economy, one of the largest economy of the
region.
Arab world, more than 40% of the GDP of the Arab countries, you cannot accept definitely 10.5% a total unemployment rate, and that's of course worsened with the female, which is 28.4%,
yes,
and 6.5 with the males. I think this is unacceptable. So this is where the king, for many reasons, for the negatives it has, whether being social impact or political impact or psychological even impact. So this is unacceptable. So the king came, in fact, and was very tough on that, and he said we must Saudiize at the private level sector, and also at where the government applicable. Yes, I know the government is not the right place to Saudiization, because it's 1 million here and there, but where the Saudiization goes to the private sector. And this is where the king really was serious about it, when he have talked about forming a committee that has the Ministry of Labor in it and other ministries to come up with the solution, proper solution, how to get over the dilemma of Saudiization. But again, Saudiization, it's a lot of issues into it. One is to have the right people for the market.
Exactly.
We're not critiquing the education system, but again, we're critiquing people that are not skillful enough for the requirement of the job market. This is one thing. Second, you cannot have a Saudiization when you have expat or inflow of expat, if you will, to the country.
The influx.
The influx. If you take the year 2009, there is about 1 million visas has been issued, and that's a lot of visas to be issued.
Big number, exactly.
Now, putting in also not counting who they come for Hajj and Umrah and they stay around, leftover, as they say. So you cannot really continue as such and having. And you can't Saudiize at the same. You have to have programs, you have to have plan, you have to have medium solution, you have to have medium and long-term solutions. I'm not really complimenting on banking because I'm a banker, but banking did very well in Saudiization, SABIC in that regard, Aramco in that regard. So we have a business model, SKICO in that regard, the Royal Commission of Jebel and Yumbo. So we have really very good example business model to follow. If we just follow these models, I think we should be in business.
And let me end the program. I have 2 minutes. I want to distribute it among just in 30 seconds. How do you want to end this program? How do you see such royal orders in your point of view?
I think, as my colleagues said in the beginning of this episode, I think it shows King Abdullah personality as a human being, as a Muslim, as a human being, and as a leader who became a leader after great kings, starting from King Abdulaziz and his other sons. And he wants to maintain this legacy, to maintain this in the best way he can. And I think he showed the world how Saudi people are, and now it became well known all over the world that the kingdom of Saudi Arabia is the kingdom of humanity.
Thank you. So,
as I said, one of my favorite parts of the program is how we are dealing now with the poor, with the underprivileged, with the vulnerable parts of our society. And I think this is really important. Another related part of the program is support for the private sector, because the government should no longer be the only source of support, the only source of initiative. So in addition to the assistance to hospitals, for example, the programs calls for assistance to professional organizations, help them do their job, and to several other private sector initiatives. And I think that is really extremely important, because to lift the burden from the government, reduce dependence on the government.
Well, the freedom of speech, and you talked about some of the directives to the media. Somebody thought it's like a straining and constraints to the media. This is to the contrary, in fact. We want the speech, we want to, I'm a writer, Dr. Abdullah is a writer, maybe Dr. Abdullah also is a writer. We want somebody to write to really benefit the country. You can critique, but we want really constructive critique on a system or a service. But I don't want to critique somebody, yourself or myself, because there is no value added. But critiquing the system, having solutions, having recommendation, is what.
Well, thank you all. The viewers, at the end of this program, I want to thank my distinguished guest, Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Aweshik, the Director General International Economic Relations at the GCC General Secretariat in Riyadh, Dr. Abdullah Al-Haydan, Advisor at the Ministry of Islamic Affairs. Thank you, sir. And last but not the least, Mr. طلعت Zaki Hafid, the Media and Banking Awareness Committee Secretary General in Saudi Arabia. I want to thank you all for joining me. And at the end of this program, I want to thank my director, Hiyam Al-Kilani. Until we meet you once again, thank you and good times.
يا مالكنا يا عسانا فدوة لك، تدعي الأطفال لك قبل الشباب. يا مالكنا يا عسانا فدوة لك، تدعي الأطفال لك قبل الشباب. أتعبت ظهرك يا أبو متعب ورجلك، لين شعبك اعتلى